2 Corinthians 11:14, it tells us that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. He'll present himself as being good and noble, which in reality, he's a liar and the enemy. These days, an increasing phenomenon is the lines between good and evil are constantly being blurred. A few things in current events that have been happening is, just a few months ago at a local town here in Connecticut, the Satanic Temple started having a after-school Satan club in which high school students could attend after school. Recently, I had a discussion with a young man. He was wearing a pin, had a picture of a pentagram with the goat head on it, which is a symbol of the Church of Satan. And I asked him, I said, do you know what that means? And he says, kind of, sort of, but I like the idea of Satan. At state capitals around the country, we just had Christmas passed, and, a lot of churches will set up Christmas displays, and the Church of Satan has come in and said, well, if the Christians have displays, we want to set up satanic altars. And one of these altars, satanic displays, had a picture of an arm holding an apple, and it said, knowledge is power. And the way the Satanists are portraying Satan is they portray him as somebody who came to free us from oppression, and he came to give us knowledge. And some Satanists will go so far as to say, well, we don't believe that Satan's an actual being. We don't believe he's real. He's just symbolic of an idea. In 1969, Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, he published the Satanic Bible, and it's this philosophy of self-indulgence. It's like, if it feels good, do it, and it's self-idolatry. It's like, you are God. Couple points I want to make before I go any further is, one, Satan is a very real being, and secondly, he is not your friend. I want to go back to Genesis chapter 3 and just think about this a little bit. So like that satanic display had a hand, an arm holding up an apple, and it said, knowledge is power. Well, in Genesis 3, God, he put the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden, and he told Adam and Eve, he said, the day you eat this fruit, you will die. The serpent comes along and he says, well, you're not really going to die. God knows that the day that you eat this fruit, your eyes will be opened and you will become like God. Now, in Genesis 3, there's a verse that says, Adam and Eve, they looked at the fruit and they saw that it was pleasing to the eye. And one of the things that's going on here is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God set limits around it. Now, it was pleasing to the eye, and if it was used within the purposes that God had set, it would have been a very good thing. But Satan came along and he perverted the limits that God set. Just like, God said in the Bible, a man will leave his parents to be joined to his wife. And God sets the limits of sexuality. It's to be between one man and one woman within the limits of marriage. And within those limits that God had set, it's a very good thing. However, the world says, Satan says, it's like, you don't need to follow those limits. You can just do it however you want. And so what Satan is doing, he's perverting the limits that God has set. Satan is a perverter of the ways of God. Let's think about what Jesus said about the devil. Jesus said that Satan was a liar and the father of lies. Jesus also said that Satan came to steal, kill, and destroy. Just like before Jesus was crucified, Jesus said to Peter, Peter, Satan demanded permission to sift you like wheat that he may destroy you. And that's what Satan does. He exalts himself up against God's ways, and he seeks to destroy us. As I mentioned before, the lines between good and evil, they're being blurred. One thought I've had is the word enemy. We don't always use the word enemy within the church. We definitely don't always use it in conjunction with Satan. John Calvin, in his Institutes for the Christian Religion, one thing that Calvin points out is within the scriptures, everywhere and always, Satan is referred to as the enemy. Satan is our enemy, and he should be referred to as such. And as Christians, we should oppose Satan and his ways. Of course, if we meet Satanists, share the gospel with them. Be bold. But as far as the idea of Satan being a good guy or a noble guy, that should be spoken against. And he should be defined as our enemy. Now, another response as Christians that we should have is, we see the Satanic Temple doing things like setting up displays and starting Bible clubs, and we can cringe, and some of us may fear. 1 John 4:4, it says, "Do not fear them, little children, for greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world." And one thing we know from the Bible is Satan does not win. Satan was thrown down from heaven to the earth, and the Bible tells us later on that Satan will be thrown down to hell, to a place in the lake of fire that has been reserved for him. And, on our own, we're not stronger than Satan. Of course, Satan is more powerful than us, and he's smarter than us. But Jesus is greater than Satan. And Jesus watches over us. Jesus is within us. And because Christ lives within us, and we have Christ looking over us, we do not need to be afraid of the devil.